Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Game Pass Grab Bag, your weekly podcast reviewing games from the Game Pass collection, bringing you three unique perspectives from varying skill range. I am the seeker of fame and fortune for this episode, Andrew. With me, the curse of this podcast, Keith.
So rude. Hello.
And the one who brings the boom to the Temple of Doom, our returning guest, Dave.
That's right. Hi, everybody.
And this week, we played another roguelike, because that's what we tend to do these days. And this time around, we played Curse of the Dead Gods by Passtech Games. Curse of the Dead Gods is a top-down roguelike where you are playing an explorer trying to seek fame and fortune through these Aztec temples. But unfortunately, as you're progressing, you are also obtaining a curse. So you have to try to make it out as quickly as you can through the temple as you try to fight the dead gods. Going around, Keith, was this a gamer pass for you?
Well, it's a roguelike, so I think you know my answer. I think this game is awesome. I really like it. It's nothing genre breaking by any means. They don't do a whole lot. I don't think that's really all that special, but it plays nicely, and I think it has some fun elements. The light and the darkness. And like you said, kind of running up against the timeline of the curses. So in some ways, it kind of almost had like a Darkest Dungeon feel in that way. But yeah, overall, I really liked it. It's a game. Definitely a game.
I'm actually going to be with you, Keith. I'm going to give this a definite game as well. I know we've played a lot of roguelikes. I mean, because this is what we do.
I mean,
but
you
for
do
whatever
say
reason...
That you don't know when this episode's coming out. We might not be playing a lot of roguelikes then. Just kidding, we will.
At this point in time, we've already played like 20. But Curse of the Dead Gods, for whatever reason, like, this game hooked me. I was really into this. It does have a lot of just small, simple mechanics, but these small, simple mechanics just are really cool. And I really enjoyed my time with Curse of the Dead Gods.
This was definitely a game for me as well. From the moment I picked it up, I knew this was something that I liked, and it hooked me. When I died or if I lost, it wasn't frustrating. It was more, I knew what I did wrong, and I wanted to get back in there and beat it. So I think that's a good mechanic for any of these types of games. So this was definitely a game.
So, wow, I'd like it. This is a definite game from all three of us. I don't think we've ever had all three definite game on something.
Unanimous.
But, yeah. I was honestly surprised how much I love this game. But yeah, getting into the story is non-existent for the most part. I mean, it has like a quick second cutscene of like a black and white silhouette of, a guy entering a dungeon, and the door closes behind him and he's trapped in this dungeon, and that's about it. So you can just kind of piece together that you are kind of a explorer, probably in like, I don't know, what time you'd say this is, like 1920s or so?
Yeah, I suppose.
I don't know, it's like pistols. I don't know, maybe like 30s. I don't know, but either way.
I don't think time is relevant outside of the fact that there's no laser guns or anything, I guess.
That's true. But you're essentially this explorer who already has a cursed arm, and you are essentially just trying to go through these dungeons. There's three type of categories. There's, red, which is like a jaguar, which tends to be more blood and fire. Then you have green, which is a serpent, which tends to be more poison. Then you have blue, which is...
lightning?
Yeah, but what was the species? Yeah, it's lightning, but what was the species?
Oh, eagle. No,
eagle, that's right.
Yeah, eagle, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, a lot of lightning and ends up doing more with weather effects. So you have like these three different paths that you kind of end up having to go through each one of them to progress. And then at the end of each one, you end up fighting a boss. So there is a little bit of lore. I don't know if you guys ever looked through the bestiary, but this is one thing that I do love when roguelikes do, that there is like a bestiary and you can kind of get a little bit of backstory. And I don't know if you guys read them, but some of them are really dark.
I didn't go into it. I looked through it a little bit to see like how I was progressing through unlocking some of them, but I didn't really deep dive or read much of it. No, any of it, I should say.
Same here. They seemed a little too long to me, so
I mean, they're a little wordy, but it's still wasn't too big. But I mean, I at least love that they at least added it. But because this game deals with like an ancient Aztec temple, which is awesome because that's not a theme that's played with too much. So I like that a roguelike ended up doing this. I mean, some people are comparing, so Hades is a game that a lot of people are comparing this game to, which Hades ends up being Greek mythology, which is cool. And then, this one does Aztec. So they're kind of like similar-ish, but I do love like the Aztec theme of it, because when you're reading through some of the lore, it's talking about like how they were doing sacrifices and like the different gods they were sacrificing to and like what their purpose was. but some are kind of dark, as I said. Like when you're in the lightning world, like you're fighting like these electric babies, and like reading the story on them is just kind of creepy.
Were they sacrificed babies?
Yeah.
So it's like solved it.
It's creepy. But yeah, so there isn't too much of a story. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get to the end. I'm on the final boss run, but I just can't get past it. This is the time I'm finally stuck on it. But anywhere I've seen, there isn't really much of an overall story.
No, I was going to say, I don't dive into the codex stuff or the bestiary and all that stuff, information, I do like that they have it. And honestly, I like that it does exactly what a roguelike should do, and just be like, hey, here's a kind of general reason that you're at this place and you're doing this thing over and over again. We're not going to force you to have this whole big storyline around it, because you're really just here to play the game.
Yeah. I always think it's funny. I never figured I liked a bestiary until I played a game that doesn't have one, and then I kind of get frustrated. Because I like to at least, even though I don't always read them, it is always kind of nice to have it and look at and, maybe see some concept art, maybe get some tips and tricks to how to beat the monsters. But I also like the bestiary was also kind of a side quest. Because in order to progress in the bestiary and unlock more art or whatever, you have to kill a certain amount of those enemies without getting injured by them. So it kind of added this cool side quest aspect to it.
Yeah, that's actually what I was checking every time I would go into it. I would go and let's see how many more I have to kill of this and that or whatever. So I do agree with you there.
And I didn't even see that.
You didn't even know that was a thing?
James wait, there's a bestiary in this game?
That sounds pretty cool.
Just made you love the game even more now.
I know.
But of course, the big hook of this game is, of course, the gameplay. And I gotta say, I cannot believe how much I like this gameplay, because I was just this is just another roguelike. You're doing the same things, running through a dungeon, dodging, attacking, fighting a boss, picking up relics, rinse and repeat. But Curse of the Dead God actually has some unique elements to it that really hooked me. For one, this game has a stamina bar, but it's not even a stamina bar. It's a stamina pips. You have 6 little pips.
Dots,
whatever you want to call them. And it had a cool mechanic behind it, because it's a risk and reward with just the stamina. Do you want to keep fighting and end up doing a combo, but doing a combo ends up consuming one of your stamina, or do you want to save that stamina to dodge? And so I really liked this kind of balance act of risk and reward. And then you have a whole light and dark system. Then you have traps around the temple. Then you have a whole curse aspect. I love the mechanics in this game.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things around it, and what's gonna need what a roguelite at this point needs to do to be a good one is it needs to give you at least just enough that stands out. And I know I said it doesn't do a lot of special things, but I don't know, like you said, these mechanics, they're just so small that they help the gameplay, because in a lot of ways what I felt like it ends up doing is the gameplay, it's easy to pick up, it's easy to play, but it's very, very hard to master. And It wasn't even really until the last couple hours or so that I've been playing where I'm like, okay, I actually really feel like I know how to do this. All of the fights are kind of a little bit of a dance with, because every move is not scripted, but they have a set move or a set of attacks to the enemies. But you end up with different variations of them all the time, so you don't know exactly how you have to do that dance every time. And that's where the hard to master comes in.
Yeah, you made a good point, Keith. This game is familiar enough to someone who's played a roguelike, but different enough to hook you and be different and unique.
And I think the stamina bar does provide that extra wrinkle a lot, though, because I know when I first started, I just ran in there, and that was the first thing that basically killed me, is I'd run in there, try to fight everybody, and then you find yourself out of stamina, and you get killed really quickly.
Yeah.
But learning how to balance it and to parry and to roll or dodge was, and when to just leave enemies alone and not go for your combos was, all about that dance, like you said, Keith.
Parrying is so hard in this game.
It is. I'm so bad
really.
at it.
But
what I loved about the parrying, though, is it was always for me a last ditch effort, because if I ran out of stamina and I couldn't dodge, you still have a chance to parry. And doing a parry is very difficult, and if you can master it, you will master this game. But I at least like that they included it. It wasn't something I always used, but it was nice.
Yeah, I was absolutely the same way. It was always like, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap, I don't have any dodge. Better hope I hit this. And then when you do, it usually gives you stamina, maybe bonus, depending on what you have on you. Like, it was refreshing, and it made it just that much more interesting every run, because then you factor in all three of the different worlds, and they get a little repetitive, but as far as like each one individually, but outside of those, like, they're all very, very different fights. You want to play them differently, take different equipment in there, and like they vary on their difficulty. So I even really like that aspect of it.
Yeah, I loved the enemies of this game. You kind of mentioned, Keith, like there's three unique worlds of, red, blue, green, as I said at the beginning, and they're all different but kind of the same. So anytime you go to a world, you normally have like one sort of melee fighter, like a very generic enemy. And so each world has its version of that generic enemy. Each world has its version of the ranged enemy. Each world has a version of their mage. So you kind of, anytime you're going to a new world or trying out a different run, as soon as you see an enemy, you can kind of figure out like, oh, he's the guy who's going to be the melee guy. He's the guy who's going to be the ranged guy. So I loved, even though you're in an unfamiliar place, it's still similar enough that you kind of had an idea what was going on.
But their timings were different, which could
really
true. Throw you off.
Yeah, the Harpies had wicked range as a melee, and you just wouldn't be expecting they come flying out of nowhere. And then, you just have like those little creeper ones that were just fast as all get up, and they'd sprint up on you 4 at a time. So yeah, it was just always some varying degree of how they came at you.
For me, I hated the green world. The enemies in the green world always irritated me. I thought the temple was the boringest, and I hated the enemies, especially the bosses.
I think it's funny you say that, because that was my favorite. I actually struggled the least in the poison area, and I just really liked it. As a matter of fact, I don't know if it was my first playthrough on the 3rd tier, but it was definitely the first time I got to that boss. I was telling Dave before you got on here, was that I beat him the first try. I mean, I was beefy, but it was one and done for me.
That's one thing I really, really got to praise Curse of the Dead Gods for, is its difficulty. So when you first start the game and you start a run, you get like a map that kind of shows you a temple, like a pyramid. So you have like 3 tracks on it, but you can only go on the first floor of it. So like as you're beating, a little bit, yeah. And like unlike Slay the Spire though, your first run, as soon as you beat that first boss, you won. You beat the run. Congratulations. And you unlock the next floor of the temple, so you have to start over again. So this game really just drip feeds you the difficulty, and I loved that so much of this game. As soon as I started it, very first run, I beat the first boss. And I was just like, this game's so easy. I'm going to burn through this game. And I will say, for the most part, I was going pretty quick. Most runs I was beating in 1 or 2 tries, and it wasn't until the final boss where you literally have to climb the entire temple, fight every single boss, and get to the final end. That's when it's like, holy crap, this is really difficult. So it does such a good job like feeding you. And it's not like, hey, you better have mastered this right away, because here you go, you're off to the wolves.
Yeah, I agree.
So the funny thing about the difficulty to me was the beginning of the run almost always felt the hardest. It was like really? The very start of the run, because you have nothing. And so you're like you're not under prepared by any means, but it actually have to like kind of chew through a couple enemies. But then you start to go through a couple of rooms, and you get maybe an upgrade to your weapon, maybe some extra stat points, and you're still fighting the same difficulty of enemies that you were 2 rooms earlier. You're just stronger now, so it kind of gets easier. And I'd say even right around till about the latter half of the 2nd tier, and it's right about there where then it just starts to get harder and harder, leading up until that 3rd boss. So I thought it kind of has like a cool little like bell curve, of almost like reverse bell curve, where it's like gets a little easier and then a lot harder again.
What did you guys think of the curses?
So the curse mechanic I thought was awesome in this game. So anytime you open a door, so you have a curse meter, 0 to 100. Anytime you open a door, you get 20 curse points. Some enemies only do curse damage. Anytime you get to 100, you get a curse. And there's 5. You have a total of 5 curses you can have. Once you get to the 5th, your health just drains until you get to 1 health, and it's a 1-hit kill, and you're dead. I thought the curse system was super cool, because every room you're going to has like a reward. You know, at the end of this one, you can either upgrade your stats, you can upgrade your weapon, get a new relic. And if you know, there's gold you're picking up, and you can spend the gold to buy the item or whatever, the upgrade. But if you don't have it, you can also do it for curse points. And I loved that mechanic. I loved just like being like, crap, I don't have enough money, but I really want this item. Screw it, I'll risk it, I'll take the curse. And then some curses you get are actually helpful, and then other ones are just awful. But I thought the curses were such a fun mechanic.
I liked them too. I thought they made you change how you played the game, but I thought some of them were really, really tough. Like the one that makes you lose stamina, that one basically was like run ending.
Oh yeah, when you lose one of your dots of stamina.
Yeah.
Hated that one.
There are a few others that were really tough too.
Yeah, but some of them were kind of helpful, like the Bloodlust one, where killing enemies no longer gives you gold, but gives you health. And like you can end up being super beefy because you end up just having so much health.
Yeah. See, that's the thing is I thought the curses as a whole, and maybe this is what I liked about the system, is it wasn't overly bearing. I do agree the stamina one sucked. I mean, losing that little bar of stamina or whatever it is, that made it difficult. But outside of that, I thought most of them at least had some sort of a benefit attached to them. And then, like you said, some of them could almost be an outright bonus if you were built right for it. Because there were times where I'd have a relic already that I did like 30% damage when I was in darkness. And, you know, maybe my weapon also did 15% damage in darkness. And then on top of that, I have a quote-unquote curse now that does another 30% damage in darkness. So, like, very quickly, I am just mowing through everything without even needing to worry about the light. So, thanks, curse. But you don't always get that lucky. I mean, there's still always that RNG of a roguelike. And so, yeah, they can always be harmful. But I liked that you could play with them. And I think you were kind of saying that, Dave, as far as like having the ability to, you know, build yourself around them and whatnot.
I don't know if you guys felt this way, but I felt like as far as a roguelike goes, I did not feel like I was a slave to the RNG. Like, I felt like this game was 100% skill. You could have the crappiest weapons, crappiest relics, but as long as you're good enough, you can beat this game.
I don't think I would say a slave to them, but there was definitely like the RNG could absolutely work in your favor. It rarely hurts you. So I guess maybe that's what you're saying, because I don't feel like it ever held me back a whole lot. But yeah, it could definitely help you a lot.
The later runs, it mattered more. I mean, you had to take what they gave you, and it sometimes severely changed how you played.
Yeah. Another thing that I think is really helpful playing Curse of the Dead Gods, enemies can just drop stuff. And this is something that I never realized how much I loved and like wanted. You know, normally when you play other roguelikes, it's normally like, oh, at the end of the room or after a boss, you get a relic or whatever, an upgrade. No, you could just kill just a random monster, and he could drop a really good relic or a really good weapon. And it was just like this, it was a nice reward. It always just made me feel like I wanted to go out and keep fighting enemies and exploring the dungeons. It wasn't just like, oh, I can only get a relic if I fight a boss or go to the relic room. No, you can just get them. And so it's a constant reward. And I also love, too, if you get a relic you don't like, you have the option to actually sacrifice it to the gods and get some sort of reward, whether it be money or, you know, lose some of your corruption from your curse, or, you know, maybe you can get increased stat points.
Or life.
Like, yeah, there's just so many little mechanics of this game that just made it so fun.
Yeah, there was no such thing as a truly bad drop. Everything had some sort of a benefit because of that trade-in option. Yeah, sometimes it's like, here's 110 gold, and cool, I have 10 life right now. I kind of needed more than just some gold, but a benefit's still a benefit, and so you can't argue there. But yeah, there's just the different ways that like even stats stacked up on top of each other, and like they used mechanics isn't the word for it, I guess, but they just, I don't know, they had cool ways of doing it. Whether it was like, you know, you having a stat on a weapon that would be, you know, increase in damage if you were carrying another type of weapon in your other hand, or being in light versus dark, or for, you know, bonus damage for building a specific stat. Things like that are just really cool little features of ways that you're like just always improving every time you got something or every time you upgraded something.
Yeah, as much as like Keith, as you said, like I love just like any drop. No drop is a bad drop. And like that includes like with the weapons. The weapon catalog in this game is to me is incredibly impressive.
There's something like 4 or 5 pages of like 30 a piece, I think, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, there's a good chunk of them.
Yeah, I think my favorite was, even towards the end, I still think I liked the whip the best as my secondary weapon. In the primary, I liked the sword, something quick and more melee focused. But each weapon had its own benefit, which I thought was good. And you could build them out to help you and to help you beat that boss. And some bosses, you wanted to build a different set than you'd want to build for a different one, which is kind of cool.
I will say, my only complaint with the weapons is the bows. For me, so you have 3 categories of weapons. You have your primary, your secondary, and then you have a heavy weapon. So primary is like X, secondary is Y, and then your heavy weapon is your B button. And so what I hated about the bows were under the heavy weapon category, and they were kind of in their own kind of a curse to have, because every once in a while you're exploring the dungeon, there's temples and traps that can actually attack you, and not only that, there's also cracked walls, and only bombs and like heavy hammers can break those walls, which are also heavy weapons. So if you get a bow and you take up your heavy weapon category, you will not be able to break these traps or be able to open these walls. So for me, I always hated the bows. They were great, they were fun to have, and I thought they were helpful during the boss fight, but you end up like not being able to access some parts of the dungeon, which to me kind of sucked.
The spear was the same way.
Oh, that's right, and the spear. Yeah, that was another heavy weapon that you could do that.
Yeah, I almost never picked either of those up. I didn't care for them. I thought they were too slow, and all in all, just not that good. My absolute favorite heavy-handed was one of the 2-handed hammers. I think it was like the sky hammer.
Oh yeah,
that thing just
lightning.
Yeah, it just like always did a ton of damage, and it was just really effective at sweeping out and clearing mobs of like smaller enemies. But as far as the main weapons, I'm kind of torn, because I honestly towards the end liked any main weapon that had some good elemental damage, at least like poison or fire, but really preferably poison seemed like it was the best one. And
poison's great against bosses.
Yeah, so I like one of my best runs, I had the poison claws, which I think were by and far my favorite, because like you said, Dave, I liked the quickness, and they didn't use up a lot of stamina, so you could get in and out of fights pretty quickly, which I liked a lot. And so I had a set of poison claws, which was just an absolute melter. And I think it was a whip that I had that even increased my claws damage. So it was like just the perfect combination, and both of them were poison. So those are great. But I also got to say, I'm a big fan of the shields, but only really specifically the one that gives you the 25% chance to just automatically parry, because that is such a lifesaver, and you don't really even realize it until you use it. And it happens to proc like 3 times in a row, and you're like, I would have been dead, because it's like one of those big beefy boys or something like that. I was a big fan of that, and that was one weapon that I consistently took to like the end of a run when I would get it.
I used them a lot more, the shields, after talking to you guys about them, because you guys were telling me how good they were, and I hardly ever used them. But because when I first came in, I was terrible with them, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to use this thing. But once you get a little better and just kind of get the timings down, it is a great weapon. They are awesome.
Yeah, they also do a ton of damage. If you can do like that, like a good XXY, they will pack a punch, and they usually send some backwards too.
They do, which is awesome for like exploding enemies and stuff like that. You can send them into walls or into other groups of enemies, which is really cool.
Yeah, you remind me anytime you fight I always call them the big old beef boys. Those enemies were the worst. Every dungeon had its own version of it, and they were just the most obnoxious enemies because they had the largest swing, and it just irritated me.
Yeah,
hammers and stuff.
I'll tell you though, if you could parry one of them, that's all it would take. You'd knock them back, and you could just melt them down. They really didn't. They had a lot of damage, but they took a lot of it. So if you had your weapons leveled up, the parries were hard, yes, but if you could pull one off, they were pretty easy to take down. I did hate them though. Yeah.
I will say some of my favorite weapons for the primary. I loved the claws, like you said, Keith. For me, the Claws of Evisceration, I believe they were called.
Oh, yeah.
Because they always crit if an enemy's below 30% health. So those things end up melting a boss. Like, if you can get a boss down to 30% health, it's just the fight's basically over. And then if you can get some other relics that, you increase your crit damage or you gain health for all the crit damage you do, like, it's a deadly combo. But I also loved any throwing weapons. Any of the throwing daggers, like the chroma daggers, which would randomly do some sort of elemental damage. So much fun. I love just being able to keep my range. They would end up burning a lot of stamina, but it was good.
Yeah, that was exactly it. I was so torn on daggers because they were good. I'm trying to think which one in particular. I think it was actually the red dungeon is where they were pretty effective because you didn't have anything that would like dive at you real quickly. Like,
yeah,
they were not really all that effective on the lightning
except
one.
for the big beat boys.
Well, yeah,
big beat boys will still dive, yeah.
But on the lightning level where you have the harpies and again like 4 of them are coming at you like dive bombing and you out of stamina and thought you were far away, now you're not far away and out of stamina, and it's just those fights would get ugly. But they were such a fun weapon, just like having the ability to carry all of the elements and really not knowing what you were going to get, but always throwing something elemental out there. It was a good mix up. As far as I was going to ask you guys, but I don't think we really mentioned it, was the element where there's that like those blue tokens that you get that act as a currency, which allow you to like buy permanent upgrades throughout the game.
Yes.
Like many a roguelite will do, have these options to give you permanent upgrades throughout the game. So you can upgrade these 3 blessings? Is that what they call them? I don't actually remember what the term is for it. But basically you have you can start the one with or the run with 3 separate blessings. So I was curious which 3 you guys used.
Wait, you mean the altars?
Not the altars, because you use the blue coins for.
I think they are blessings.
Yeah, I think it was just like.
That's the...
Yeah, like.
Oh! They're perks essentially.
Perks. Yeah, so
I think that's an easier way to determine. Now I know what you're talking about.
I'm pretty sure they call them blessings, but yes,
yeah, I think they are too. But they're perks. Yeah.
But effectively, yeah, they're 3 perks that you can start with. So, I was curious if you guys had favorites that you stuck with on that, and if you did. And follow up question: did you buy the 251?
I did, and that's the one I use a lot. The 251 is anytime you complete a room without taking damage, you get 1 dexterity skill point, and I didn't proc it all the time, but whenever I did, if I ever had a run going, it would just snowball, and I would just become a glass cannon if I could just really get that going.
Oh, dang. That wasn't even the one I didn't realize there was more than one. I bought one of them.
No, wait. That one's 200. Yeah, the 250 is the greed counter, right?
Yeah, so I did that with the greed counter.
I got that one, too.
And it's kind of the same idea. I mean, you instead of dexterity, I think you get 1% damage for every stack of gold counter you have. And the gold counter stops between combat. Now, it's tricky because it still counts down during combat, and if you get hit, it breaks on you. But, yeah, I think I got up into, like, the mid-20s. And so you're just doing a bunch of extra damage, and it does, unfortunately, cap your gold increase at 500%.
Yeah, which I thought was lame.
It is. I will agree. Because, did you guys notice, I'm pretty sure... So there's gold that sometimes enemies drop that hits the ground, but I think you get gold every time you kill an enemy.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where that gold counter comes into effect.
My other ones I liked, the early one I got that I liked a lot was one that gives you 1,000 gold to start the run, and it gives you, I think it was
5 perception.
Yeah, perception.
That's a fantastic one to start with, like at the beginning.
Yeah, and then later on I got the one that allows bosses to drop 5 weapons, which was really good later on, or 5 things, whether relics or weapons or whatever. That's clutch. I like that one a lot.
Yeah, I'm really frustrated that you could only pick 3 perks, because some of these, like a handful of these perks are awesome, and I'm like, I want them all. The one that I took for granted at the beginning, because it was super cheap, it was like 5 skulls to get, but whenever you killed an enemy, you replenished like 2 of your stamina dots. And like I never realized how helpful that was until I took it off. And then I'm like, I'm always out of stamina. But when I had that on, I felt like I never ran out of stamina.
That's the worst, when you don't even realize how good something is until you take it away. And you're like, oh, crap, I feel just absolutely like my hands tied behind my back right now.
Yeah.
I think for a while I actually just did the trifecta, as I like to call it. It was the one you were talking about, Dave, with the +5 to perception and 1,000 gold. But there's one that gives you 5 dexterity, and I think you get haste for like 10 seconds if you get a perfect dodge or something like that.
Yeah.
And then the one that gives you 5 Constitution, that's the word. Thank you, Dave. It gives you 5 Constitution, and that one's cool because it gives you a bonus one if your health is under half and you go through a room. So you can start to stack up some Constitution pretty quickly with that. Also run at the verge of death for a while. So yeah, I ran with those until what you're saying, Dave, is I finally saw the one that gave the 5 drops, and hot dang, again, that is a fantastic one. When you're getting 5 drops, one tip I learned though, always, you don't have to pick them up, but always look at them before you start deciding what you want to do. Because the amount of times that I kicked myself because there was one that I wanted because it was like +5 to dexterity, and it gave me the 66% increase on things offered to the gods, and I'd already offered up every single item did. I'm like, oh, that would have been so much fun. I've done that a couple times. So yes, there's one of the perks that gives you bonuses for your god offers, and absolutely check to make sure that thing didn't drop first before you start offering other things up to the gods. Hot tip for everyone out there.
Good tip, Keith.
Thank you.
What did you guys think of the boss fights?
I thought they were a lot of fun.
I was actually surprised by them too.
Yeah, they were all varying degrees of difficulty, but it was. This is where I don't know if it was necessarily RNG or at least just game choices at this point. Depending on what you had for a build, could definitely make them easier or harder.
Oh yeah.
But as a whole, yeah, they were all varied enough. They seemed to kind of fit a pattern of kind of the theme of their biome that they existed in, and yeah, they were fun.
I liked them too. I thought they were difficult, but not too crazy difficult. The only thing I didn't like, I still didn't like that snake one. I know you beat it on your first run, but
the serpent avatar.
I hated him. He was the worst.
I agree with you, Dave. He was my least favorite.
All he just was drop the ads quickly.
But he just wasn't a fun fight. I will say that. Like, his move combo is not fun. He brings ads, and if you don't kill the ads, he heals. I don't know. He just wasn't fun for me. But no, I agree with you, Keith. For me, it is more of, I think, your build to how you fight the bosses. So, like, the very first boss in the Poison World is a witch who throws skulls. If you have a ranged weapon, she's super easy. But if you have to get in close, she can be devastating.
Yeah, she does so much curse damage too.
Oh my god, yeah, it's so annoying. But I loved the boss fights. Like, you make a good point, Keith, where like I love the design of them. They were really cool. They really fit their biomes, and I never felt like any of them were cheap. I thought like all their moves were well telegraphed, and they were just overall pretty fun. They weren't anything too frustrating. It would stink if you just weren't strong enough and like you were barely doing damage to them, and the fight just takes way too long.
Oh yeah. Well, and another thing I liked about it too was actually that none of them also felt like they were just beefed up versions of the enemies you had been fighting throughout the whole entire dungeon. They were all unique enemies with unique skills and fighting styles. And that was what helped make it refreshing, because there's nothing worse than you run through this dungeon fighting a whole, mob of ghouls forever and ever, and then you get to the end and it's just like, roar, cool. I'm mega cool, and I'm extra bloody, roar, and you're just like, oh, cool. But in this case, like, you're like, oh, geez, this is this crazy, like, like you could tell on the fire one, it was like a hunter of some sort. It summoned the jaguars. It had spears. It's like, okay, I get what this character is, even though I know nothing about it. They felt cool. Yeah, they did such a good job with the Aztec theme, like associating the Aztec theme with everything. It's just well designed, and I think they just created a really cool world with the game. But Keith, I'm also surprised you haven't talked about your least favorite enemy. Oh, the traps?
Yep, the traps.
The dungeon itself.
It's like, wait a minute.
The dungeon itself.
Let me think about this. Gosh,
the natural environment, Keith. Just anytime playing with, hearing him play, just, God, these stupid traps.
I was good with the projectile ones. It was always the stinking statues, which just goes to, it was always the lightning temple. The lightning temple got me every time. because there's things on the ground. There are these statues coming after you. There's things that the projectiles shoot that go blowing up on you.
There's landmines.
Yeah, and then you got harpies screaming at you. There's too much going on. There's too much in that lightning temple.
I like that you could use the traps to your advantage.
Yeah,
I thought that was
cool
such
mechanic.
a cool mechanic that you usually don't see. Is that, I mean, you could use them like very strongly to clear out a dungeon and barely swing a weapon.
Which there's one of the perks that, you know, enemies take 300% more damage from traps. And it's like, that's really cool. If you're good at pushing enemies into traps, like, you can just smoke through an area.
Well, that and even things that weren't necessarily traps you could interact with. I mean, I guess it kind of was, but like in the poison area, you had those little poison clouds, which by themselves just did some damage. But then if you had a fire weapon, or even your torch at that point, you could light that poison gas on fire and you just explode everything around it. So you could just kind of set it and forget it in some ways. See what I did there? Set it on fire?
No. Thank you for explaining that awful joke, Keith.
I did a funny.
But another cool thing that Curse of the Dead Gods does, and that is actually its daily runs. I'm generally not a huge fan of daily runs because it's just like, whatever. But in Curse of the Dead Gods, it greatly rewards you to do daily runs. So it actually also banks your daily runs. It has a slot of 3 daily runs. So if you don't play this game for 3 days, you can come back. Boom, you have 3 unique daily runs you can do. And once you do them once, you know, they're gone. And then it leaves an empty space. You have to wait another day to accrue another one. But the fantastic thing about doing daily runs is, you know, it plays with some curses, has some, you know, different mechanics, which makes it more interesting. But anytime you complete just a room in a daily run, you're getting bonus skulls, which you use to permanently increase your runs, like in the benefits of your other runs. So it is super beneficial for you to do these daily runs. And they were just a fun mixture and a nice mix-up.
Yeah, I did a few of them, and I thought they were pretty fun. Especially if I was close to wanting to buy something with the blue skulls, I would just do a daily run, and they, like you said, they rewarded you a lot, so it kind of helped you push you into getting stuff.
Yeah, if you beat one, you get like 200 skulls or something like that. Like, you get a significant amount of them.
Yeah, I mean, the game itself, as you get into those later tiers, once you start hitting the 3rd tier of rooms, like, it really starts to drop you a good chunk of them. You'll get a lot for going through just any run, honestly. But I loved the daily runs, actually. They're the same, because I'm pretty sure there was even more than just 3 distinct daily runs. So it wasn't like you were just getting the same 3 over and over, or that you just get the same 3 over and over again. There's a whole bunch of them. And, like, I think of Slay the Spire a lot, because when I play that game, I usually will check out the daily run, and so I do those. I've even messed around with, like, building just custom things or whatever, but it's really just a set of, like, on-off switches of, like, okay, this thing doesn't happen, or you get increase of this. What I felt like was different about the daily runs in Curse of the Dead Gods is the fact that it, like, altered the gameplay. You had that one where I think it is an effect you can get in the regular game, the hallucination, but the whole game is just in that mode. It's this weird fuzzy black and white. You have no HUD outside of your stamina blips, and so you're just running this blind run, and so it can be really difficult, or maybe not, and you don't even realize it. You could be dominating and not knowing it. You could also be near death and be like, man, I am crushing it right now, because you have no way to tell. It doesn't let you pick your rooms. The map is gone. Everything is completely set for you. So, like, that one's really cool. There's the one with all you have is the cursed bow, and it's your only weapon of any kind.
That one was fun.
Oh, that one's a ton of fun.
I haven't played that one yet.
Yeah, so there's the one where you start with 1 health. Like, Andrew was laughing at me because on the stats page it tells you your quickest death, and mine was 12 seconds.
Yeah, which is impressive. This game, actually, as difficult as it is pretty forgiving. Like, it's not like one hit and you lose the majority of your health bar. Like, this game's pretty forgiving, and so that's why I thought it was funny. It was like, man, 12 seconds, that's an achievement, Keith.
Yeah, so one of the daily runs, you start with 1 health, but you gain health every time you pick up an item or pick up gold. So I looked forward to playing them, and then with the added benefit of really getting loaded up on those skull currencies, it was great.
I mean, I only really played like 2, so the one I played the most of was the one with the mirror rooms and the no HUD one. I did really well on that one. That was fun, except for it was late and I was trying to figure out how much longer I had to go, and it just kept going. But aside from that, it was fun. It was challenging.
Yeah, this is a way to show how like addictive this game was. This game, Curse of the Dead Gods did a really good job at being able to save your progress. Anytime you entered a new room, it always popped up on your screen. You can save your progress right now. Like, it gave you the option to press start, save and quit, and be done. Once you kind of left the first beginning area, then you couldn't just like save your run. But anytime I saw that, I'm always like, no, I got to keep going. This game just hooked me. Even when I lost, I'm like, I'm just going to do another run. Each run would kind of, vary from like 15 minutes to almost like 90 minutes, depending like, how far of a tier you're in and how far you are in the game. But anytime I died, I just wanted to keep going.
Yeah, even on some winning runs, I think I had like sub 20 minutes. And that was going through like all three because, again, I got really fortunate with the way I was able to build everything. Like, I got a good starting set of weapons that I liked all of them. They paired well. And I just cruised through it. And then, there's some where it's like close to an hour. And then I end up losing on the final boss.
Yeah, I thought by the third tier, it was taking me over 30 minutes per run most of the time.
Yeah.
But the first time it was, you only stay there for a very short period of time, but those are nice 10, 15-minute runs, and you're done.
So what did you guys think overall of the graphics of Curse of the Dead Gods? Man, you guys are just so thrilled. You're both just like thinking like, were there graphics?
I don't know. They were fine, honestly. Like, I have no complaints about them, none at all. I think they were perfectly fine. I liked the character models because even amongst the three different biomes, you sort of said it earlier, but they're very character models. Well, you knew what they were because they all had a similar function, or like, I don't know how to, like, the mages all kind of floated, or you knew what they were doing by their size or whatever it may be, or you knew their category, I guess is what I'm thinking. But they were all unique, and nothing was a recoloring anywhere in the game. It was all unique. Yeah. Even the weapons themselves had slight variations to the way they looked, and they weren't just again a recoloring either. So I really appreciated their attention to detail, even if it wasn't like blow you away graphics. But I kind of am assuming it's a pretty small studio, so I'm not looking for blow away graphics.
12 people.
Nice. Congratulations. I'm gonna call them the Dirty Dozen.
Yeah, I thought the graphics were good. The game played well, and that's what more mattered to me than the graphics, was that it, everything was responsive and there's no like lag or anything crazy like that. You could see everything that was going on even in darkness, enough to play, and so the graphics were serviceable. They were good. Yeah,
I thought they were good. Nothing mind-blowing. This game does a lot with the lighting effect, being in the darkness or being in the light, and I thought it was well telegraphed, if you're in the light or the dark. Not only that, there's actually, I don't know if you guys noticed, but there was actually a symbol at the bottom of the screen showing if you're in the light or the dark.
Yeah, I thought it was nice that they had that. I never used it because like you said, they did a good enough job, or you just kind of knew when you were and weren't in dark and light. I mean, sometimes you could very quickly tell it by your damage, for one. But it usually carried like a good enough outline of what the light was allowing you to see that you knew when you weren't in it. One thing I thought was really cool, though, was that if you lit enemies on fire, they acted as a source of light. And I thought that was just like a really cool attention to detail, I guess, like from a gameplay but also graphics standpoint. It was just kind of neat. Or they could actually light torches if you knocked them into a torch, and like little things like that were kind of neat.
Yeah. Or lightning also causes fire as well. It's not like, they just got electrocuted. It actually set people on fire.
I didn't notice that. That's cool.
But yeah, I thought the character designs were really impressive in this game, because I also like this game's a bit like cel shaded, and the graphics to it it's really nice, because when you first play it, it's very colorful and stuff. But as you get like farther in the dungeons, it gets like more gruesome, like especially like in the Red World. Then there's like rivers of blood. There's bodies being decapitated and just mangled and on pikes. And so it's like weird, because when you first play it, it's kind of colorful and nice and bright and everything, and then it just gets dark. So I thought they just nailed the Aztec theme really well in this game.
You know a lot about Aztec mythology and lore?
So much. I'm practically Aztecian myself.
That's what you do with all your downtime at work. You just sit around and read about Aztec lore.
Yep, basically.
I want to hear you pronounce the names of the enemies.
Oh, man. Hold on, I can actually... Do you want me to follow them up? Let's do this.
Is that offensive? Are we going to offend people with that?
Probably.
Good. Yeah, that's what we need on this. I just know there's a lot of letters that in my mind, I don't feel like they make words or sounds that I can make with my mouth. So,
see, I know plenty about Aztec lore because I can just speak it so fluently. You got Caxtaka, the High Lord of the Storm, or Malik Pal, the Flesh Monstrosity.
That sounds
Ratatouille, the Abomination.
Oh, I think that's nailed it.
You're fluent.
Zucat, the Witch. See,
sounds like you're announcing Pokemon.
I know. Actually.
All right, now we're definitely canceled.
So yeah, I thought the graphics are great. And sorry the sounds went. I thought the sounds were just good. This game didn't have too much music. There wasn't anything too crazy with it. And I don't know. The sound was nice because the sound did a good job telegraphing enemies' attacks. It would normally do like a high-pitched sound when an attack, like a attack that was being able to parry. When an attack that you could parry was about to happen.
Yeah, I also actually used the sound effects of my weapon as like a rhythm for attacking. Like you just especially like you had the sword, you'd have the like swipe, 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 and then you'd hear a pause, and then you could hit Y real quick and get your combo off for that. So like I didn't like the sound effects so much as far as like, oh wow, these are really immersive and experienced, as much as I liked them as like these are very helpful to the gameplay.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was a good way of summarizing that, Keith.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I'm really good at summarizing things.
But I mean, it wasn't like detrimental. Like honestly, I played this game a handful of times silently when I was like editing some episodes, and you can do it just fine.
I would have struggled. I really think I would have.
Oh, really?
Because I turned down the sound a few times, and I struggled with it.
Maybe I struggled. I just didn't notice.
That can happen.
It is possible. I just played this game so much that I can't remember what runs were what. But yeah, so getting into our final category of the achievements. And overall, the achievements are actually not that bad for when it comes to a roguelike. There are a handful that were pretty tricky, but I didn't find them to be awful. I felt like this game kind of drip fed you enough achievements that I always felt like I was kind of progressing.
Feels like the majority of them are built into like progression.
Yeah.
Or at least the biggest ones are, and I think that's why I struggled to get some of them. Well, I'm only one temple behind you guys, I guess. I just haven't beaten the third tier of lightning. But yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like they were too bad, but I think that as a whole, there are definitely some. I think if you're trying to like max this game out, you got to be at 50 plus hours because you got to like unlock every single like blessing and all that type of stuff, or perk and all that. Right?
So, yeah, you really got to collect the skulls.
Yeah, so,
but I didn't see anything that was like kill 10,000 of this enemy type or anything like that you see a lot in this type of game.
Or like die 100 times or die 1,000 times or something crazy like that. You're like, look, I die a lot, but it also takes me 35 minutes to die, so that's a lot of time to play this game. But yeah, you're right. There's nothing that's overly grindy, but at least in the context of the game, I guess are.
There was crap. I forgot to test this out. But as far as I can tell, I think I would recommend this for achievement hunters because this game also does have an assist mode, and you can actually turn on invincibility. And as far as I can see, none of the achievements exclude you if you do any of the assist mode. Unfortunately, I forgot to test this out. I wanted to test out for some of them, but I'm pretty sure you can do the assist mode and just kind of burn through a lot of these achievements.
Oh, so you're going to cheat for some achievements and then just call it testing? No. Quote unquote.
Yes, for education reasons.
This is for science.
It's for science.
It is not for me to be at the top of the leaderboard. I'm not concerned about that.
Shut up, Keith. It's for science.
I'm just gonna go.
I just need one.
Don't worry, Andrew. I'll take care of it for you. I'll just go through and make sure I can get every single achievement with it, and
Yeah, why did you test it out, Keith? You
I don't know. Or why don't you test it out on Liz's account? She doesn't care about achievements. She never gets any, so it's not like she's cheating anybody.
Because I forgot. See, you can't even make fun of me for it because it's not like I actually did it. But I probably won't now.
I can make fun of you for forgetting.
That's true. I'll allow that.
And I did.
But yeah, none of the achievements, there's none like, hey, beat the entire run without taking a single hit. Probably the hardest, grindiest achievement is the one called Memoirs, where you have to write all bestiary entries to complete their sketches. And in order to do that, you have to fight and beat the enemies and not take damage from them. And that includes the bosses. So you have to beat each boss, I think it's 5 times, including like the final bosses, and not take any damage. That's a pretty tough challenge.
I think I'm actually close to it on the level 1 red boss. Because his moveset is minimal enough and pretty easy to go hitless on.
Yeah, but to do the final like avatars.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying the rest of them are easy. I was just stating that his is doable.
So yeah, for Achievement Hunters, yeah, you might want to check it out. So yeah, then getting into our final thoughts. Keith, go. Why don't you go? Because I'm going to go last because I'm going to take Liz's Metacritic.
Oh, girl. Well. I was pretty already interested to play this game when I saw it. Well, I saw Dave playing it first, and I looked at it and I thought, oh, that's a Keith game. So I was already ready to play it, and honestly, never looked back. It was really just fun from start to finish. I apparently am just not as good at video games as Andrew and Dave are because I struggled to get through some of the temples in the earlier runs until I started to get into some better rhythms, but it was never so much that I felt like this game is too much. Like when I think back about playing Dead Cells, where, yeah, you beat the game once, and then the very next tier of difficulty is just almost unbeatable, unless you're ridiculous. I don't know. The progression felt reasonable in this game, and it felt fun, and all of your upgrades felt fun, and they felt useful, and I'm saying the word "and" a lot. So that's a thing that's happening. But really, at the end of the day, the gameplay just is a lot of fun. And as Andrew said, it has such a good job of doing this. Just like one more run, I'm gonna do it this time. I definitely can do it this time, and I keep wanting to come back. And I think I'll probably continue playing this game. It's a game that I'm gonna have fun with again. So definitely a game. I give it a solid 85.
Okay, good. You just steal my score.
Is it stealing if I said it first?
Ooh.
Probably.
Good point.
Oh no, it is written out on that whiteboard behind you. My score is 85.
Please don't steal.
All right. I thought this game was really good. I also thought it was a Keith game, and so I decided to try it out. And I think it just had some really good systems, and it's not overwhelming with how many systems or how to master them. It's just really fun, and it's easy to get really sucked in. I think people who don't usually play these types of roguelikes would still like it because it does have kind of a ramping up difficulty. So at the beginning, you can kind of feel like you're doing stuff well before it starts to get really tough. Overall, I give it a 90.
Oh, so you're just adding on 5 points to those bonus Keith guessed it points?
You stole my score, I told you.
Well, and you actually said something interesting because Andrew already mentioned the assist mode, but I didn't really think of that in terms of someone who's never played a roguelite at all. If you're to pick this game up, so few of this genre has that functionality. And I think that's so cool that they can just be like, yeah, here, you may not be well versed in this system, but come along. We'll help you get there, and we'll give you a reason to want to, because it's such a turnoff to people if you're not like generally good about some of these things, because you have to remember so many different items. What did I like? What did I not like? That it can be overwhelming, and it's just going to push people away if they're not familiar with it sometimes. So I think it's cool to like really help people along.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I kind of to quickly go back, I know we kind of covered it. That was one thing that was nice. As much as like, there's actually not that many relics. There's maybe like a good like 15 or so. It's just you're getting better quality relics. So I didn't feel like this game was flooding you with like, hey, this thing's going to add this weird perk to you. They were all very basic, but they just got like better quality, and it was nice. But yeah, but I'm fully with you guys. Curse of the Dead Gods just, it hooked me right away. Like, not right away. At first, when I played, I was just like, whatever, this is a typical roguelike. But then, after I was kind of learning these mechanics, the mechanics are very simple, but it was shocking how much they added to this game, how much risk reward, how much of that just kept driving me and kept pushing me to be better and to get better weapons, better, and to just hone my skills. Like, I was really into this game when we started playing it. I thought the boss fights were great. The enemies were great. The items were fun. Just, I love the environment. Just, there's very few bad things I can say about this game. I was really surprised that there's just gonna be just another Keith roguelike, and that was it. Rinse and repeat. But we did not explain the mechanics. I think like how much fun they add to Curse of the Dead Gods. So you really should check it out. For me, I'm giving this a 90. There's just very little I think I can complain about this game.
Now you stole my score.
I know.
I mean, I was going to go back.
I'm giving it a 92.
I was going to go back and add 5 points for the assist mode that I forgot to talk about. So I mean, we can all be 90s.
No, you know what? I'm actually going to give it a 92. How about that?
Ooh.
Okay. And I did also forget to mention that the time to beat, you're looking maybe at 23 hours to do the main story and about 42 hours to do all the extras. But as far as Metacritic goes, you are looking at a Metascore of 90. Wait.
Nailed it.
Hold on. As far as Metacritic Scores goes, the critics gave it a 90 and the users gave it a 7.5.
What do users know?
I was surprised that users are kind of like the score is that low, because the only people who wrote reviews all gave it a 9 or a 10. This one user here wrote, I didn't like it at first glance as it felt confusing with high learning curve, and my biggest mistake was I bought it on Switch. Giving it a second chance on Xbox via Game Pass, and I have to admit, I was wrong about this game. It rocks, hooked me in like only Dead Cells could before with roguelike games. It plays so much better on Xbox due to the controller, stable frame rates, 4K, where you can really see the immense details of the graphics, smooth controls, and even more smooth action. Yeah, and like that's generally what like a lot of consensus of people are saying. A lot of people are comparing this to Hades, which I think is fair, but I mean they're both roguelikes. I mean you can kind of compare it to any of them. But yeah, this game is just a lot of fun.
Which actually I forgot to, or I don't think we mentioned this at all, but I had seen this and then I just quickly looked it up. Just a final thought. Did you know they did a like crossover with Dead Cells in this, where I think they added some like weapons or something that were like pulled from
Dead Cells?
Dead Cells?
They have the cursed chests, right?
Is that it's from?
Those are from Dead. From Dead Cells.
Okay.
Yes, and I mean, did you notice one of the curses that you get? The one where you take like 50% more damage until you kill 30 enemies, and you run faster. Did you notice the curse? You have the Dead Cell guy's head on your body.
No, I didn't. That's really cool, though.
Yeah, your head's like smoky with like a one glowing eyeball. And yeah, it's the Dead Cell.
Oh, dang. That's a really cool nod to it. Well, I guess not even a nod. It's like a crossover. But
yeah.
I don't know. Just thought it was kind of cool, you know. The game, or kind of developers in the genre, scratching the backs or kind of, you know, plugging other games. I always think that's kind of neat.
Yeah, I thought this game was from the same studio, but then I looked into it and it's not. The only other game the studio made was a kind of a tower defense game called Space Run.
Okay, that's like number 3 on my genre list, so okay.
Yeah. Oh, wait, no, they did another one. Curse of the Anima, I think was the other one. I think it was called, which is kind of a little bit more of an RTS, but yeah.
So they just love curse stuff.
Oh, yeah. But anyway.
Curse of the Monkey Brains.
That'll be the next one.
I hope.
It'll deal with Indian temples.
Nice.
All right, but I think that's going to do it for us this week. Thank you all so much for joining us. I've been your hardcore gamer host, Andrew. You can find me on Xbox Live at Firebird01952. If you have a game suggestion or you just want to say hi, we would love to hear from you. We love getting fan mail. You can email us at GamePassGrabBag@gmail.com, or you can check us out on Facebook at GamePassGrabBag or Twitter at GPGBPod.
And I've been Keith, and I'm probably going to play some Curse of the Dead Gods.
All right.
I'm David. Thanks, everybody.
Really one up me there, Dave. I'm David.
All right, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll see you again next week.
Bye.
Bye.